Farmweek is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farmweek, we have two feature stories for you. We'll have an update on the GMO controversy, which shows no sign of cooling down.
In our Southern Gardening segment today, see who is on the guest list for your next garden party.
In our first feature story, you'll meet Kevin Harrison, the 2011 Mississippi Forestry Association Outstanding Logger of the Year. Forestry is a dangerous business, but Harrison's crew has worked 30 years without a lost time accident.
You cannot have enough safety. I mean, everybody out here, you know, you spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day with somebody, you know, you become like family. But there's no amount of money, you know, in the world that can bring somebody back if something happens.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artis Ford. Welcome to Farm Week. Today, it's a feature story edition of our show.
Artis, operating safely in a business involving heavy equipment is difficult. It's more difficult when you have heavy objects being felled, dragged, and lifted. And that is a description of the logging business. Next, we revisit Kevin Harrison, the 2011 Mississippi Outstanding Logger of the Year. Harrison Logging has not had a lost time accident in its 30 years of operation. Farm Week caught up with them originally in the fall of 2011. This is one of the 4 harvesting crews operated by Harrison Logging of Grenada, Mississippi. This crew is managed by Kevin Harrison in the center. His father, Carl Harrison, on the right manages a second crew. Kevin's brother Darren on the left manages a third crew, and cousin Paul Harrison manages the fourth crew. Altogether, there are 27 employees. Darren Harrison says things were much different back when he joined the operation in 1992.
We had a bale cutter and a cable. It was all cable and chainsaw work then. We don't even own a chainsaw anymore. It's a big difference what it was then and is now.
Today, Harrison Logging operates a fleet of equipment that includes 7 skidders, 5 feller bunchers, 6 knuckle boom loaders, and 4 crew and service trucks. For each of the 4 harvesting crews, safety is always the top priority.
You cannot have enough safety. I mean, everybody out here, you know, you spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day with somebody, you know, you become like family. But there's no amount of money, you know, in the world that can bring somebody back if something happens.
Harrison Logging has never had a lost time accident since the business was started in 1984. Their perfect safety record can be attributed to ongoing training from the Mississippi Loggers Association, the Mississippi State University Extension Service, and other groups. Members of the Mississippi Forestry Association Timber Harvest Committee say the company's outstanding safety record, along with its use of best management practices or BMPs on timberland, are 2 reasons why Kevin Harrison was chosen the Outstanding Logger of the Year.
Probably one of the greatest attributes that we saw that was their flawless safety record. Been in the business for 27 years without a recordable accident. Not only that, but talk about the BMP work that they do, and they hire a separate BMP contractor to do all their BMP work. You know, it's always, you know, a lot cheaper for them to do it themselves, but they figured out, well, you know, we can hire somebody and do somebody that specializes in it and does a good job of it.
And as most loggers know, when you get ready to move, you're in a hurry to move, and you won't do the BMP work like a contractor will. I mean, and I want to make sure all my clients are satisfied, and, you know, I mean, repeat business is where we get 90 to 95% of our work from.
This job at Goose Valley Ranch in Oxford, Mississippi is a good example of that repeat business. Harrison Logging is doing a second thinning on a tract of timber owned by Joe Huggins and his wife, Linda.
We feel like he just does an exceptional job. He takes care of the property. We have areas that we call signature spots, and he pays particular attention to them and does a fine job doing them however we want them to be. If we want to leave stuff, he works around it and just does a great job working with the landowner and taking the time and effort to really do a fine job.
Besides knowing the landowner's expectations before moving any equipment onto a job, Kevin Harrison develops a specific site management plan for his employees to follow while working there. This plan incorporates the principles of the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, as well as best management practices.
You got to know where everything's going to be set up, where the road's going to be built, where the land is going to be built. We've got a program, my timber buyer, before we ever move on a job, that we got a topo map, aerial photograph. We to get with the landowner, see where he wants the roads, you know, and you need to know 2 days ahead of time before you ever move on a site. You got to have your plan laid out before you ever move on that job, know what you're gonna do. If you lose a day's downtime, I mean, you done lost several $1,000s if you waiting to try to figure out where you going, where you gonna move to.
Harrison Logging's concern for the environment is seen in all of their management practices. For example, landings are leveled by hauling tops and debris back into the woods with skidders. It is scattered over skid trails to minimize compaction of the soil. Fine debris that won't hold in the grapple is left on the landing to prevent soil exposure. Water bars and turnouts are installed on the roads after completion of a job. 2007 marked a turning point in the history of Harrison Logging. Before then, almost all of their timber was contracted with Weyerhaeuser and Georgia Pacific. Only 15% was purchased directly from landowners. But market changes in 2007 provided the company the opportunity to expand by purchasing more privately owned timber. This eventually led to the hiring of a full-time procurement forester by Harrison Logging.
The role that I play with Harrison Logging is strictly a procurement role. To be sure that the company maintains an inventory, a forest inventory that's large enough to keep all the Harrison crews running with wood. My responsibility covers pretty much everything from contacting any prospective seller of timber to the contracts that are involved in procuring timber or any county haul permits as necessary.
The wood from the thinning operation in Oxford is going 2 different directions. The chipping saw is being taken south about 30 miles to Weyerhaeuser and Bruce. The pine pulpwood is being hauled 124 miles northeast to the PCA Containerboard Mill in Counce, Tennessee. Carl Harrison, who started this logging business in 1984, says the distance wood has to be hauled now has increased dramatically from the 1980s.
Well, back then it was more mills and closer haul. If you hauled over 30 miles in, you was on a long haul. Now it's very common to haul wood 100 miles or better because of mill, there's not as many mills now.
Throughout its history, Harrison Logging has been an active member of the Grenada County Forestry Association. In May of 2011, they sponsored a CFA meeting on the economic impact of forestry. In other recent community involvement, they sponsored a logger education program last year in the county. This included providing a log truck to MDOT for a day for use in demonstrations to other loggers. With a flawless safety record, dedication to the use of best management practices, and a commitment to the industry, Harrison Logging is an undisputed leader in North Mississippi. From Oxford, Mississippi, I'm Leighton Spann reporting. You can watch this feature story on Harrison Logging on our Farmweek website or our Facebook page or on YouTube. Our website address is farmweek.msucares.com. We are also available at twitter.com/farmweek. So here we are, late February 2014. That story originally done in 2011, and still no lost time accidents at the Harrison logging crew.
Which is astounding because just there's so many ways to get hurt on a logging site. If you've never been on one, the noise is what will get you because the noise is so constant. I always, like I tell you, you'll never hear what runs over you because the noise is so constant. So the fact that they've gone 30 years, that just says volumes about the way that they work.
And they're still operating 4 crews, as you heard in that story. Kevin told me that right now they're cutting various locations, but all the way from Pickens, Mississippi, all the way up to near the Tennessee state line. So with 4 crews, you cover a wide area.
And you mentioned too that the Cortland, Alabama pulp mill that's going to be closing is going to affect them because they work in northeast Mississippi. So once again, they're going to have to haul a little further, I guess, to sell some of that wood. But you did say they actually have increased their business some.
Yes, they have actually added a second procurement forester, timber buyer, if you will. So they have a buyer working out of Grenada, Mississippi, one out of Oxford, Mississippi now. So they're growing.
Well, that's good news to hear. Well, it's time for today's trivia quiz on Farm Week, and it's about pizza. A lot of different ingredients are used to make pizza. How much do we love it? Well, how many acres of pizza do Americans eat every day? Is it 77 acres, 100 acres, 121 acres, or 225 acres? We'll have the answer after today's Southern Gardening segment.
It is fun to invite your friends over for a garden party. In this week's Southern Gardening segment, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman tells us how our southern gardens have invited and uninvited guests every day.
Everybody loves a garden party. And in our southern gardens, we often have invited guests along with some party crashers, especially when it comes to nature's critters. Some of these critters are easily seen and are invited and honored guests. Hummingbirds absolutely love cigar plant Cuphea, so they can be attracted to our gardens by design. The same is true of butterflies. These colorful orange fritillary seem to be attacking this Dallas red lantana. The black swallowtails love the nectar of these Mexican firecracker plants. And monarchs love the butterfly weed, and their invitation to the garden party is often followed by interesting, colorful, and hungry caterpillars. Most gardeners don't usually plan on inviting bumblebees to the party, but they're still a welcome guest. In fact, their work in pollinating plants is a necessary job in the garden. Other insects often crash the party, but that doesn't mean they cause problems. This predatory wasp often searches out garden pests and proves to be a beneficial guest in our garden. Reptiles also prove to be uninvited but beneficial garden party guests. This garden anole spends his days prowling the garden, eating whatever bugs he can find. And sometimes, even bigger reptiles hang around. Here, our southern gardening producer, Tim Allison, finds a slithering garden visitor, this little garter snake. Also be aware that dangerous predators are always around, waiting to pounce on their unsuspecting garden prey. Every day your southern garden hosts a garden party. Take the time to look for and enjoy your party guests. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening. Ooh, shishi!
And Gary says to take the time to be observant, and you'll probably discover new visitors to your garden.
It's time for the answer to today's trivia quiz on Farm Week, and it's about the amount of pizza eaten every day in the United States. It's more than you might think. How many acres of pizza do Americans eat every day? Well, the answer is B, 100 acres. According to the National Agriculture Day folks, keep in mind a football field with the end zones is about 1.2 acres. We're going to pause now for a break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll have the calendar and one more feature story for you. It'll be an update on genetically engineered foods. Are we any closer to bringing the sides together?
Our tradition of learn by doing is creating new opportunities. My 4-H is involved with service projects in communities all across our state.
We develop leaders for Mississippi's future.
My 4-H is science and technology.
everything from computers and robotics to exploring our environment.
My 4-H promotes active lifestyles and encourages physical fitness, healthy foods, and nutrition.
My 4-H is Mississippi 4-H.
Before we get back to the last story, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. Mississippi State University's 2014 Greenhouse Tomato Short Course takes place next Tuesday and Wednesday, March 4th and 5th. The location is the Eagle Ridge Conference Center on Raymond Lake Road in Raymond. This short course has attracted growers from more than 25 states and foreign countries. The time for early registration is past. It'll cost you $200 at the door. A food safety workshop is planned for Mississippi produce growers on Tuesday, March 11th. Location is the Mississippi State University Coastal Research and Extension Center on Pops Ferry Road at Biloxi. Seating is limited, so early registration is encouraged. This workshop will help growers gain certification and learn how to grow high-quality fruits and vegetables. The MSU workshop is free, but the farmer must pay for an independent audit of his farm to complete the certification. Cost share assistance is available through the Mississippi Department of Ag and Commerce. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot. Our last story today concerns GMOs, genetically modified organisms. It might be more accurate to call them genetically engineered, but the GMO label has stuck. Opposition to GMOs is heavy in Europe, where recently just a second variety of GMO corn was approved for use, that after a 12-year battle. Market to Market's Paul Yeager examines the status of the continuing controversies surrounding genetically engineered crops.
In the early 1970s, scientists found a way to add microscopic strands of genetic material from one species to that of another. For the first time, 2 or more species DNA, the genetic material that dictates how an organism looks and acts, could be linked in a lab in a way that wouldn't happen naturally. 25 years later, U.S. farmers began planting crops that were considered transgenic, meaning they contain genetic traits of other organisms. The innovation opened a world of possibilities for improved food production, but it also drew fire from critics.
I think the agricultural world was pretty excited because this was a quick way of making modifications to a plant that could not have been done before. There was a small segment that was concerned because it's easy to think of some horror stories that, you know, how plants could be modified in a way that could cause problems.
Despite some reservations, the amount of farmland being planted with genetically modified or GM crops has grown steadily since their commercial introduction in 1996. According to a leading biotech advocacy group, a record 18 million farmers in 27 countries grew biotech crops in 2013.
There was not adoption in other places like Europe, where farmers and the public were not in support of these technology and these crops. And so there have been very little adoption in Europe. There was large adoption in South America.
As the technology spreads, scientists are watching the responses of certain plants and insects to biotech crops. The concept of natural selection, in which only organisms that are best adapted to their environment survive, comes into play. Individual weeds may have traits making them less susceptible to herbicide. And the International Survey of Herbicide-Resistant Weeds revealed that 232 weed species have shown resistance to at least one type of herbicide.
We need to find other ways to fit into the current production system for farmers to control the weeds, because we've selected weeds that are highly adapted to herbicides and evolve resistance very quickly.
The U.S. Food and Drug Administration believes many genetically engineered products are similar to their conventional cousins. And the onus is now on the company marketing the food to ensure its safety. Nevertheless, some believe the federal government needs more rigorous approval standards.
We've looked at the safety data for the current crops that are grown in the U.S., and we're comfortable telling consumers that the foods made from the currently genetically engineered crops that farmers are growing in the fields in the United States are safe to eat. We do feel that the Food and Drug Administration, whose job it is to ensure that we have safe food here in the United States, that they haven't done an adequate job of oversight of those genetically engineered crops. Their regulatory process is a voluntary consultation process. They don't have a mandatory pre-market approval process.
Major developers of genetically modified seed face sharp criticism over potential risks of their products. But officials at DuPont Pioneer, a leading seed producer, say their approval process involves 150 tests and requires an average of 13 years and $130 million.
I think the European regulations use what we call the precautionary principle, which in a way of speaking is, since we don't know for sure, let's not use the technology. That's the precautionary principle. If we were to use the precautionary principle in our lives on a regular basis, we would probably never get out of bed in the morning. One would be correct to state that we don't know for sure, but we know with a fair amount of certainty that we're in a good spot here with this technology.
Some states and consumer groups are seeking mandatory labeling of foods containing genetically engineered ingredients, while others insist the government should be more involved before products hit the grocery store shelves.
You know, our view is if you're worried about the safety of these foods, you shouldn't be trying to get mandatory labeling. What you should be doing is trying to get FDA more authority so they can determine whether these are safe before they get to market. Determining safety after they're at market with labeling is the wrong way in our mind. That's the wrong public policy.
Those developing new GM crops, however, argue that lives are already being lost due to bureaucratic red tape. At the dawn of the 21st century, nearly 1 billion people all over the world were hungry. Since the United Nations projects world population will exceed 9 billion by 2050, the agency is calling for a 100% increase in food production by mid-century. According to the UN, 70% of the additional production will be realized through the use of efficiency-enhancing technologies. And proponents believe genetic engineering offers a way for crops to be grown on land previously viewed as unsuitable for food production.
It's a challenge that I've come to call the single greatest challenge in human history. Can our planet produce enough grain and cereal and food sustainably to feed the 9+ billion people who will be on our planet by the year 2050?
World hunger notwithstanding, some caution that U.S. farmers are overusing GMOs in some regions and may need to consider alternatives.
With any technology, whether it's genetic engineering or other kinds of varieties and that farmers have adopted, one has to use them in a judicious fashion, an integrated fashion, in a sustainable fashion. And what we are beginning to see is that farmers have not done that with these genetic engineered varieties, and we're beginning to see that they've overused them and abused them. It's just one tool in the toolbox that scientists can use to help farmers do their job.
For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.
And you can watch this story again on our Farmweek website. That's farmweek.msucares.com. We will have a link to the Market to Market website where you can read the story as well as read the script. You can also find us on Twitter at twitter.com/farmweek. And Leighton, you know, it just seems like the people who are against GMOs are over here and the ones who are for them are over here, and there's just no middle ground.
No compromise coming.
And it may be what's going to happen is whoever has the greatest numbers, if they demand that I want non-GMO, that may drive it regardless of whether you think the science is there or whether you think the science is not there. It's just going to maybe the force of public opinion that ends up making things different. But we do have those 35 years, we're only about 35 years away from 2050. So we're going to have to come up with some food from somewhere.
That's for sure.
Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. In Mississippi, we're familiar with growing farm-raised catfish. On our next show, aquaponics.
Aquaponics combines fish farming with growing plants hydroponically. The water from the fish is sent to the plants, which clean it up. They use the nutrients in it and return the clean water to the fish. Aquaponic systems can be run in a greenhouse or in the ground.
If you'd like further information on a Farm Week story or want to suggest a story to us, you need to get in touch. Our snail mail address is Farm Week Box 9625, Mississippi State, Mississippi 39762. Our telephone number 662-325-2262. You can also contact us through your Mississippi State University Office of the Extension Service. But before we go today, we're kind of sad. Margaret Buell, who works on the crew of the University Television Center at Mississippi State University. There she is. She's leaving us, still staying in video, which I don't know if that's smart. But we love her, and we look forward to hearing good things about her in the future.
One of the many key behind-the-scenes persons. We will certainly miss Margaret's talents.
That's right. But we know she'll come back and visit, and we'll be able to tell you when she wins some kind of big award, because we'll say we worked with her.
That's right.
For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artis Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.